It's easy to laugh at HOA stories, garbage bins out past curfew, grass half an inch too tall, Christmas lights taken too literally. But power doesn't need a crown. It only needs rules. And a person obsessed with enforcing them. Patricia Hawthorne had memorized the HOA bylaws like scripture. She didn't enforce the rules. She became them. And Maple Ridge, our safe, serene, suburban haven, became her personal kingdom. I'd seen it all. Delivery drivers interrogated at the gate. Landscapers cornered with a clipboard and a flashlight. Neighbors fined for windblown leaves, for cracks in the sidewalk they didn't pour, for a basketball hoop that dared to lean 5 degrees too far forward. But Patricia's favorite hunt? Visitors. She watched them like prey, stalking from her windows, recording license plates. She had claimed the unofficial title of gatekeeper, as if the neighborhood was some ancient fortress and she was its last line of defense. She once stopped a Girl Scout outside my house and asked for identification. I'm not joking. Most of us rolled our eyes. We whispered about her at barbecues. We tolerated her like one tolerates a squeaky hinge, annoying but not worth fixing, until the day she came for Emily. See, Patricia didn't know what she was looking at. A teenage girl walking with her head down, wearing a hoodie. She didn't see the honor roll student, didn't see the court-approved schedule, didn't see the daughter of the man who writes the law she pretends to wield. No, she saw a threat. And like all self-appointed saviors with delusions of control, she didn't ask questions. She called for the sword before checking the story. 2 officers. 1 girl. No crime. But what Patricia had just committed was far worse than a false report. She revealed what HOA tyranny really looks like. Not order, not safety. Control rooted in fear. Because when you live behind gates, when you breathe the illusion of control long enough, you forget the line between citizen and dictator, and some people cross it wearing a name tag and holding a clipboard. This wasn't about Emily, it was about dominance. And for the first time, Patricia was about to find out what happens when power answers to someone greater than herself. They say a man's peace is his castle, but in this world, peace has a price, and sometimes that price isn't paid in dollars, it's paid in dignity. It was a quiet Friday afternoon. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that breathes before a storm. And then it happened. Red and blue lights tore through the silence, spilling their panic-colored paint across my driveway. 2 squad cars, 2 officers, 1 teenage girl. My daughter Emily stood on our porch, frozen like a ghost caught in a photograph, her overnight bag still in hand, eyes wide, lips trembling. She wasn't crying yet. She hadn't had time to. And just a few feet away, there she was, Patricia Hawthorne, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge Estates, the HOA president, arms folded, smirk dripping with fake righteousness. She had called the police. On my daughter, on a 16-year-old girl walking home. She thought she was protecting the neighborhood. What she didn't know was, she'd just declared war on the wrong man. My name is David Garrison. For the last 12 years, I've worn the robe of a circuit court judge in Jefferson County. I've sentenced violent men. I've protected innocent people. I've kept order when the world begged for chaos. But nothing in those years prepared me for this moment, because this wasn't about law. This was about power, masquerading as concern. And once you see what hides behind the smiles in these gated communities, you can't unsee it. What Patricia did that day didn't just threaten my daughter. It tore a hole in the paper-thin illusion that any of us are truly safe from petty tyrants. And as I stepped out onto the porch, one truth echoed in my mind, louder than sirens. Some monsters don't live in the woods. They live next door. Emily's voice cracked when I opened the door. She was still trying to explain to the officers who she was, trembling under their gaze. Her hands were up, her eyes wide, as if she were the one who had done something wrong. The officers, young, unsure, stood with hands resting near their belts, eyes flicking between Patricia and my daughter like this was just another domestic nuisance call. And then Patricia said it. She was sneaking around the back of the house, clearly casing the place. I've never seen her before. Probably some runaway trying to rob the judge while he's at work. I stood there in the doorway. Motionless, speechless. The air was thick with something worse than accusation, assumption. That my daughter, because Patricia didn't recognize her, must be a criminal. That a teenage girl in a hoodie didn't belong. That a child's presence was a threat to her illusion of order. It was the kind of moment that splits a man in half. The father in me burned with rage. The judge in me took inventory. I stepped forward slowly, wallet in hand, presented my judicial eye to the officers like a man presenting a weapon, because in a moment like this, truth is more powerful than any gun. This is my daughter. Her name is Emily. She's been visiting me, by court order, every other weekend since the divorce. The temperature shifted instantly. The officers' postures changed. Their eyes recognized me. Respect returned to their voices like they were waking from a trance. But Patricia, she just stood there, eyes narrowed, mouth twitching. Her mask cracked, but not from guilt, from panic. "How was I supposed to know?" she snapped. "She was walking around the back." "The back of the house?" I said coldly. "The path to the front door, the one she uses because the gate is always locked?" Emily looked up at me, tears catching the sunlight. I tried to tell her, Dad. I said, "I was your daughter." She wouldn't listen. She just kept screaming. That's when it happened, the first real shift. The truth weighed the air down, heavy and raw. Patricia's eyes darted to the officers as if begging them to rejoin her fantasy. But the truth was already unraveling her. Officer Mitchell asked the question that cut through it all. "Did she identify herself to you before you called 911? Patricia hesitated, flinched. "Well, maybe, but I didn't believe her." "You didn't believe her?" I repeated. "Or you didn't want to?" And that's when it clicked. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. Patricia had chosen to believe a lie because it let her keep control. But the thing about control, it only lasts until the truth knocks on your door or steps out onto the porch wearing a judge's badge. The street had gone silent. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. A few bold ones stood on their driveways, watching the drama unfold like it was primetime television. But for me, this wasn't theater. This was personal. Patricia Hawthorne didn't just call the police on a child. She weaponized fear, and worse, she tried to gaslight her way out of it. "I genuinely believed she was up to something," she stammered. "You can't be too careful these days." Officer Chan cut her off, voice colder now. "Actually, you can be too careful, Ms. Hawthorne. Filing a false police report is a crime." You could see the panic spread in real time, like a stain on her blouse. She went from smug to pale in seconds, like her soul had realized what her mouth wouldn't admit. And that's when I stopped being just a father. I became a reckoning. "Tell me, Ms. Hawthorne," I said, stepping closer, my voice laced with the kind of quiet authority that turns juries to stone. "How many children have you harassed like this? How many families have you terrorized in the name of your vigilance?" She looked away. The officers exchanged glances. This wasn't their first dance with Patricia's brand of power hunger. Officer Mitchell flipped through his notepad, then said something that made the air vibrate. "Actually, Judge Garrison, we've responded to multiple calls from Ms. Hawthorne this year. Most were false alarms." I turned to Patricia again. "You're not protecting this neighborhood. You're controlling it. And today, you didn't just overstep. You shattered the line between caution and cruelty." Emily clung to my arm now, and for the first time, her fear had turned to something stronger. Vindication. Officer Chan stepped forward. "Ms. Hawthorne, we're issuing a formal warning. Misuse of emergency services is a criminal offense. This incident is being documented." Patricia tried to object, but her voice was thin, desperate. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." I looked her dead in the eye. "Your authority ends where the law begins, and I am the law." A ripple went through the bystanders, nods, whispers, years of quiet resentment given a voice. "I'll be filing formal complaints," I said, "not just with the department, but with the HOA board." Patricia stood in place, defeated but still delusional. "This isn't over," she muttered. "There are procedures, guest registrations, proper notifications." I pulled out my phone. "Let's discuss that right now. Jennifer Rodriguez, board member, attorney. I'm sure she'll be very interested in how the president of our HOA just traumatized a resident's daughter." Patricia's mouth opened, then closed, like the gavel had already fallen. And maybe, in a way, it had. Because in that moment, she realized something devastating. Her kingdom was built on paper, and it had just caught fire. News spreads fast in communities like ours. By sundown, the story was wildfire, passed over fences, whispered in driveways, posted in neighborhood forums like a modern-day town square. Patricia Hawthorne, the almighty HOA president, had called the police on a judge's daughter. The same woman who fined a man $200 for a lawn chair on his porch was now facing public scrutiny that no clipboard could fix. And I wasn't done. 2 days later, I filed formal complaints, one with the local police department, the other with the HOA board, not just as a father, not even as a judge, as a resident demanding accountability from the very system she'd hijacked. The emergency board meeting was set within a week. The community clubhouse overflowed, more people than I'd ever seen attend a single HOA event. But they weren't here for snacks and landscaping budgets. They were here for justice. One by one, neighbors stood and shared stories. Mr. Patterson, in his 70s, said she fined him for his grandson's bike being in the driveway for 10 minutes. The Silva family revealed she shut down their birthday party because the guest list exceeded occupancy expectations. Even quiet Mrs. Foster, who barely spoke in public, shared how Patricia shamed her over flower colors. And then the vote came, a no-confidence motion, hands raised, voices steady, unanimous. Even her former allies didn't come to her defense. They couldn't. The evidence was too loud. The walls of her little empire didn't just crack, they imploded. But the final blow didn't come from the board. It came from the county prosecutor. A formal review of Patricia's pattern of false emergency calls led to a decision few thought possible. She was to be criminally charged for misuse of emergency services. The irony hit hard. The woman who cried emergency at the drop of a leaf now stood accused in a real courtroom. Her arraignment felt surreal. She arrived without the armor of superiority. No clipboard, no smug smile, just a worn-out blazer and a public defender who looked like he'd drawn the short straw of the month. I watched from the hallway. I didn't need to speak. I didn't need revenge. The silence between us was enough. I heard the plea deal clearly: 50 hours of community service, a $5,000 fine, and a 5-year ban from holding any HOA leadership position. Her face crumpled. This was more than a sentence. It was a mirror. And for the first time, Patricia saw herself not as a protector of the neighborhood, but as its predator, and the people she thought were too polite, too passive to fight back. They had spoken. Because no matter how tall you build your fences, you can't wall out the truth forever. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives in silence, cold, clinical, but final. Patricia stood in that courtroom, stripped of every illusion she had wrapped herself in. No title, no clipboard, no one left to command. Just a $5,000 fine echoing like thunder in her ears. And a 5-year exile from the very kingdom she once ruled. When the judge read the sentence, she didn't cry, she didn't argue, she simply deflated, like the lie she'd lived in had finally collapsed inward. And me? I didn't gloat, I didn't smirk. I didn't say the words she'd said to my daughter. You don't belong here, because I didn't need to. Patricia didn't just lose a title, she lost the one thing she truly craved: control. And that's the part no one talks about. The high that comes from controlling others. It's a drug, and like all addictions, it turns people into shadows of themselves. But here's the truth. The dangerous one, the kind that sticks under your skin. There are more Patricias out there. People who confuse authority with power, who think titles give them permission to bully, who wear order like a mask to cover their fear of losing control. They sit on HOA boards, they manage offices, they lead classrooms, marriages, entire lives built on dominance. And deep down, they're terrified of one thing: people who see through them. Patricia didn't fall because she made a mistake. She fell because she thought she'd never be questioned. She thought people would keep their heads down, play nice, and let her rule in peace. But you don't get to police a child's presence in her father's home. Not in my house. Not on my watch. As we walked out of the courthouse that day, Emily took my hand. She didn't say much, but she didn't need to, because she knew her voice mattered, her presence mattered, and her father didn't just love her, he stood for her, against the VD. Rye's system meant to protect her, but used to shame her. That's what justice is. Not just punishment, but restoration. of dignity, of safety, of truth. And now, Maple Ridge Estates finally sleeps a little quieter, not because the rules changed, but because someone finally stood up and said, enough.